Oh, I'm gonna scare you all with their worst enemy. Math. I'm sorry, boys. It's Tupac. I'm here, and I'm just gonna make a little bit video talking about the rewards vlog, the new items, my one main gripe with it, but just overall thoughts and feelings. Our first look at their ideas on rewards. Off the top, before we get into anything, I want to say my overall feelings are excitement. This is our first look at the rewards. Hopefully they're not the last iteration of the numbers specifically, but overall, concept-wise, super happy with where they landed on some of these things. Would I have wanted some of them to be different things? Yeah, for sure. But Jagex has a vision for the game. They're creating cool looking, cool feeling items that will hopefully be really interesting and not too busted when they add them in the game. So my overall sentiment is just hype. Like, I think we got to give some credit to the JMods for, one, delivering this to us finally, two, community involvement in the designs. A freaking community member designed the Megarare. I saw this design on fucking Twitter. I wish I knew the name off the top of my head to give credit. I'll try and link it in the description if I remember. But like, that's fucking awesome. I'm sure it was mentioned in the blog post anyway. But like, just think so much credit needs to be given. Just as a, this is hype. This is cool, and I think we've got some novel, interesting game ideas that we can explore that have some juice to them that aren't just like, I don't know, big number hit big damage. But let's get into some of these specific rewards, and I'm gonna just give you my overall feeling on each of them before we get into the Megarare, which is what these numbers are related to. We're gonna get into those at the very end. But the Megarare, we'll get into. That's the main topic of discussion, but I'm just going to give super quick thoughts on all of the items that they've shown so far, and how I hope to see them treat them going forward with the next blogs. Okay, so first up, I'm going to talk about the armor. The armor, I think, is really cool. However, I think it is very overstated for the idea that they are going for. So a hybrid armor, think of this as something like wearing Void at Taub when you're learning. You wear the Void melee helmet, mage helmet, range helmet. It condenses a lot of inventory slots and lets you bring a lot of food. Having a hybrid melee mage armor would do the same. It would condense a lot of inventory slots and let you bring more food or other things. This is cool. This is interesting to help people learn new content, learn bosses with like access to like a better inventory of supplies and stuff without sacrificing too much on the DPS end or wearing something like Void where you're made out of paper. I think that's pretty cool. Where I see some problems is it just is better than pretty much everything other than the BIS. I don't think this should be like second BIS option or even BIS option anywhere. I think that becomes really scary when something like a hybrid armor becomes the thing that you're wanting to use everywhere. I think that becomes really scary in terms of the staleness of the metagame of like the class identities of melee, range, and mage. I think that starts stepping on a lot of toes and kind of narrowing things down in a way that is not really fun gameplay wise and is not what we've like grown to love over the years, which is having a clear like best for each kind of style. So if it serves as like a mid-ground stepping stone armor where it sits at like Bando's type melee strength with some tankiness and maybe like in between Virtus and Arams. I mean, maybe it can have Virtus level mage bonuses. I don't know if that's too big of an issue, but just I think it can't be any stronger than Bandos melee strength wise, and I don't even think it should be as strong as. I think it should be slightly lower. Like I think you should be having some penalty to wearing this like this beginner armor, this like noob friendly armor that is meant to be easing you into a harder playstyle, which is having more gear swaps, having more items, having the best in slot things. You're gonna have more stuff in your inventory. So I think this armor, if it is too good and it's a thing that people latch onto for too long, you're almost setting people up for failure to where like once they finally can afford bis everywhere, it's like you haven't been doing gear swaps other than range for like the past, I don't know, 2 years that you've been wearing this hybrid armor at every piece of content, I think it becomes kind of weird. So I think if they tuned it down a little bit so it actually is like a stepping stone learner armor that's not ever like better than the best in slot, and it's not ever like super hard competing with the second best in slot, I think it would be amazing. I think the stronger that armor gets, the more ubiquitous it becomes around the game in terms of what you should be wearing if you don't have absolute bis, and I think that's a little bit unhealthy for the game. But that's just me. I think if they tuned it down a little bit, it would be awesome, and I think it's a really novel idea having an armor set that is kind of not necessarily best in slot, but more geared towards learning harder content and having more access to food and stuff. People will say like, why is a hybrid armor in a raid? And my argument is if an armor this good is something they want to add to the game, it has to come from a raid. It has to come from somewhere where with a power level high enough to warrant giving something this strong. If it came from somewhere like Yama, I think that would just be so broken. It would just be insane. So I think the logic behind putting a hybrid armor like this on the raid is it is insanely powerful, and it does condense a lot of things. And if you got this on an Iron Man as like a stepping stone armor, you skip so many grinds. So I think it has to come from a raid in that sense. So I just, for people kind of super questioning it in that regard, I would ask you to think of that. Going on to the buckler, I don't have too much to say here. I think it's really cool. I hope it's not too powerful offensively that it actually just out DPS's a Vernic at places where you're like actively hitting with one-handed melee. Obviously, anywhere you're using like Lance or Emberlight, it probably won't. Like, multipliers work pretty heavy with strength bonus, but depending on how they balance the attack that they attach to it, it could be really disgustingly strong. So I think it could kind of knock a Vernic out of place at a lot of weird places. It might be kind of annoying to use. You have to use the 3 charges every time it's up to have all your DPS, but like, I don't imagine they tune this to be like negligible damage. I imagine it will be pretty impactful, so I have a feeling it will kick a Vernic out of place in a lot of spots, which puts Tob in an even worse spot than it currently is. So I hope it doesn't. I hope it's more balanced defensively, and that like attack option is kind of like a tacked on thing to the power of having flat armor. But that's really my only thoughts there, is like I just hope it's used more defensively and not used as like an always use this offhand even when you're mostly going for offense, just because you get the charges and you can use them. That's just what I think there. Crossbows, hell yeah. Blowpipe 2, lock me in. Who cares? Like, there's nothing bad to say here, honestly. We've needed a blowpipe upgrade for a long ass time, truthfully. 2-tick range has become a part of game design. It's become a part of like PVM and boss encounter design in a few different ways. And I think it's time. Blowpipe got nerfed ages ago to make room for something like this, and we finally get it. And it's from a raid. That's awesome. It can be powerful. It can be expensive. Hell yeah. This thing, if it's really good, if it's just blowpipe but better, this thing is gonna cook. You're gonna be very excited when you see this as a raid drop. Everyone's gonna want to own one of these, and it's going to maintain a lot of value. Like, that's a juicer. That's a juicer. I'll say that's a freaking juicer. We love that. And then, last but not least, the Megarare. The Crush Megarare. So, the title of the video is going to be something to do with this in the thumbnail, of course, because it's the main topic of discussion, the main thing I want to talk about. I know we spent 9 minutes just going over the overall thoughts, but I left this on screen the whole time. I wasn't showing you images of all the other stuff because this is the main thing that I want us to be looking at and dwelling on in terms of concern and or Yeah, mostly concern for the new items in terms of like, oh my god, these stats are insane. They cannot ship it like this. Um, so if you remember when Fang came out, we had double accuracy rolls and defense rolls everywhere. It was, like I said earlier, with the hybrid armor, if it was too good, ubiquitous. If you could slash or stab something, you were using a Fang pretty much, unless you had the absolute best in slot, and it was a place that had a best in slot that outshined pre-nerf Fang. That's what you were using, and it was just insane, and it outperformed everything. And the reason for this is in a game where every single attack you roll the dice, every single attack, it's an RNG gamble. Consistency weapons vastly outshine high risk, high reward, low accuracy, high damage weapons. If you have a high max hit, but you don't hit that often, and you like, that will be absolutely blown out of the water by a weapon that can just regularly hit 30s every 5 ticks, 30 to 50 every 5 ticks, just always landing, always hitting, always consistent. The reason is, anytime you're rigging the scales of this RNG game we play, it's rigging the scales every time you attack. Every time you roll those dice. If you have a 5-tick weapon, it's every 5 ticks, baby. This just is so impactful, and it's why they had to nerf the Fang so that it wasn't just best in slot everywhere. Accuracy, as it turns out, is just as strong, if not stronger, than a really high max hit. This new Megarare is not rolling accuracy many times. It's rolling its hit, the hit that it rolls many times. I think it was like 7 rolls for the hit. This is not rigging the accuracy form of the equation, but it's rigging the damage roll form of the equation. Much like the Fang, it is adding a consistency mechanic to the RNG you're rolling every swing. The Shadow vaguely does this by just having tripled accuracy and a really high max hit. It has the issue of like you can just roll 1 every time you land a hit, but like Shadow kinda has the consistency thing, but not quite to the sense that Fang and this thing would, in that they are fully rigging the game you're playing. They're rigging the slot machine every time you attack. Let's address these numbers right here. I think the Megarare, first of all, before we get into the numbers, I'm sorry, I think it's really freaking cool. I think it's awesome. I think it's really cool. I think the attack style stuff is super novel, and it's needed to be explored. Attack styles are boring as fuck. We always just use the strength one, unless one of the other styles is a different, like, stab, crush, or slash. Like, there's almost never a time where you're not using rapid for range, long range for magic, unless you're a pure, and, you know, aggressive on melee. It's just an unexplored thing. So having an attack style that changes your attack speed and makes it just like a different weapon, like, that's really freaking cool. That needs to be explored. That's a novel idea. I think that is super cool for a Megarare. Awesome. The weapon itself, really fucking cool. Like, Tizar theme? I don't know. Why? Sure. I don't get it. I haven't read all the lore, but eventually I will, and I just think it's really cool. So far, I'm hyped. Like I said at the very beginning of the video, the overwhelming feeling, hype. But let's talk some numbers, because this shit is concerning, okay, boys? Alright, so you'll see, based off of the target, you will get a certain amount of rolls on your hit splat. So on Nex you get 6, Arachnis 7, Fasani, and so on. You'll see those numbers. MDR, we're going to skip this. Accuracy is obviously your chance to hit. Mean hit, meaning average hit. And then your DPS. These are the numbers that we'll dwell on just because it's the easiest to communicate to you guys. So the DPS of this Megarare as it is written versus the current best in slot for that content. So whatever this piece of content is, this is the peak DPS that you can currently get versus the Megarare. So on the lowest end, mind you, being Verzik P2, the new Megarare will win by almost 8%. You're no longer scything Verzik P2. Verzik P3, the new Megarare wins by almost 15%. 15%. It's 15% better than Scythe at the slash raid where you get the Scythe. So you don't use Scythe at P2 or P3 anymore. So that's fun. I guess you don't... Scything at Taub isn't like a thing that's part of the content, right? It's not part of the content's identity. Next is a fun one. Current best in slot with Fang, you're getting about 8.1 DPS. DPS with this new whacker, 11.5. That's a 41.8% increase. Yellow. So suddenly Nex is getting blown up 50% quicker damn near. Seracnus, a 45% jump in DPS. Fasani, a 51% jump in DPS. Araxor, a 40% jump in DPS. And Serb, a 38% jump in DPS. Basically, if it's weak to Crush, it's getting Omega blown up by this thing. And if it's not weak to Crush, it's getting blown up harder than you could ever blow it up before with the previous best in slot. Now, you don't have to be a rocket scientist to say that's just concerning for game health. That's just not a thing we should ship into the game. Now, do I think they would ship it into the game like this? No, absolutely not. Do I think they ran all of these damage calcs? No. No, I don't think they did. I think they ran their own variant of some kind of damage calcs, and they thought what they cooked was okay. But I think they'll see stuff like this, and they'll see the community outcry regarding just how filthy strong this is, the way they've written it out and the way they've designed it. So I don't think it will be shipped into the game like this. Obviously, this is the first look at all the uniques, so I don't need anyone panicking. I don't need anyone freaking out, getting mad at JMods. Like, relax. Look how cool the items look. Look how exciting the raid seems. Like, this is going to be one of the most hyped releases the game has ever had. I need you guys to be hyped. Okay, that should be the only emotion that you have. Hyped. I have a little bit of concern for these numbers, but these are not the final numbers. They're going to see the damage calcs that the community's put together that they fucking already have, and we will get a more clean set of numbers revolving around these items. I'm going to do a quick TLDR on the whole thing at the very end for people. Basically, Megarare, really cool, bit too busted, they gotta tune it down. Hybrid Armour, really cool, can help newer players or unexperienced players get into end or harder game PVM. Pretty cool, little bit too busted, tune it down a touch. Buckler, really cool, just don't make it too offensively strong so that it steps on the toes of a Vernic. That would suck. And finally, the Crossbows, Blowpipe 2 Electric Boogaloo. Hell yes. Finally. Has to come from a raid, of course. Finally. Same thing with the Hybrid Armor. It would be too busted if it came from anywhere but a raid. Sorry, I needed to do a TLDR just so I can link it in the timestamps for people who don't want to watch a 20-minute video. But overall, really freaking exciting release. I'm glad that we finally got our first look. Let's keep the discussion going. I want to, see where your guys' heads are at. We can yap about it. I always try to reply to as many comments as I can. But yeah, thank you all for watching. I'm going to just try and get this one out tonight. I did just a one-take quick thing because we talked about it 4 or 5 times on stream today, and I just wanted to get the video out. And these numbers are the most important thing, so I want to just leave them on screen the whole time. You guys have all seen what the weapons look like and all that stuff. You're just here to listen, so I appreciate you all very, very much. I hope you have a beautiful rest of your day. Big shout out to the channel members, Sev and Why Try It Why, my fucking goats. And I will see you in the next one, boys. Peace.